The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi there and welcome to today's webinar, Garden Fresh Switches to the Cloud with Google, sponsored by Google and SADA Systems and hosted by WebAttract, the leaders in informational webinars. In just a moment, I'll be introducing our featured speakers who will share with you the Garden Fresh implementation experience and take us through the unique and simple ways that they use cloud technology to achieve improved real-time collaboration, better risk management, brand consistency, all with fewer IT headaches. And as you can see on the screen, I will be moderating today. My name is Lori Dearman, Senior Webinar Producer with WebAttract, and I look forward to today's session. We'd like to hear from you. Who is your current messaging and collaborations solution provider? Is it Exchange, Lotus, open source, Google, or maybe something else? All right, I'm going to go ahead and close it up and let's take a look, see where everybody's at right now. Okay, it looks like currently Exchange at 77%. We've got a few on Google already and 15% on something else. So thank you very much for that input. And at this point, let's go ahead and kick things off with our first speaker for today, Jeff Austin. Now, Jeff came to Google from Postini Inc., an organization specializing in messaging security, data encryption, and e-discovery. In his tenure at Google, Jeff has for many years provided Google Enterprise solutions to both direct clients and Google Enterprise partners, such as SADA Systems, the partner responsible for Garden Fresh moving to Google Apps. Jeff, as Senior Manager, now solely works with and speaks on behalf of Google Enterprise partners to change the way that organizations live and work in the cloud. Jeff, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you very much, Lori. Happy to be here.
All right, folks, and Jeff is going to set the stage today with some information on what cloud computing is and some of the current industry trends. So over to you, Jeff.
Super. Thanks again. Everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited to be able to give you a glimpse into some of the innovation and some of the forward thinking that we do here at Google on a daily basis. Quickly to define cloud, very quickly, it's an abstraction of a massive amount of servers that seamlessly work together to provide applications and services to end users. So what does that actually mean? Let's break it down and let's take a look at a couple of established technology trends that we see at Google and that we think are extremely important in the near future. So first off, cloud. By 2016, 50% of global 1,000 companies will have stored customer-sensitive data in the public cloud. I think what's important to note about that is the word public, the public cloud, right? Where your data is going to be stored and how easily you'll be able to access it. Mobile, second trend. 96% of the U.S. population has a mobile phone and 40% now own a smartphone. It is very rare, so I work here at Google in the head office. It's very rare that I see anything other than a smartphone. And third trend that we see that is extremely important is social. 1 in 3 young professionals prioritize choice of devices, apps, and social tools above even salary. And while that may be hard to believe in today's world, what you start to see here is people gravitating towards organizations that are innovative and forward-thinking, much like Google, even if they are not going to be paid quite as much. So when you think about talent acquisition and talent retention, very important moving forward. As I go on to the next slide, I want you to think about a couple of points that I'm going to highlight today. Cloud is a movement away from the 30 years of the way that we've been doing business in IT, a movement that our next speaker, Garden Fresh, has already adopted and has found profound success using Google's enterprise applications. So you're going to have the opportunity to hear from them how they have really optimized the solution successfully. But if we take a look at how business has worked over the last 30 years, personal productivity, working at desks, and the inbox and the outbox were named because 30 years ago someone would come along with a piece of paper, place it on your desk in a file or in a box that was called your inbox. You would manipulate that piece of paper, put it in the outbox, and off it would go. Someone would take it off. The old way of doing things. Physical offices, you were meant to come into the office and connect with people only because that was your only means of connecting with them if you were in the same physical place. 9 to 5, 8 to 5, maybe even 8 to 6 or 8 to 7, depending on how long you were expected to work, and on specific corporate devices that probably limited you in the way that you wanted to interact. Think about the way that you interact now. Think about the way that you communicate and the way that your employees communicate not only with you but with one another. Think about Twitter and think about chat and all the other means of the way that information is exchanged now in our consumer lives. So let's go on to the next slide and notice the 4 ways that Google is allowing your organizations to work now. Any team, any place, any time, and any device. So those 4 new design principles are what I have access to on a daily basis, and it's very easy for me to work and live in the same way. When the day stops here officially in San Francisco or Mountain View in California, there are teams that I work with, both internally at Google and externally, but the day keeps going globally around the world, and I'm able to work with any team, anytime, anywhere, because of the applications that Google provides. Anytime, because that clock goes around the clock, and I can communicate with heads of the partners that I work with when they are overseas. We can spin up a video chat. We can chat online, and we can even collaborate in the same document. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. And on any device. I think that's another important thing to note, that Google Apps and the Google Enterprise technologies are device agnostic. So if you have a policy that you allow your organization to bring your own device, or if you hear that from your organization that they want to bring their own device and communicate in the workplace like they communicate in their personal lives to make it easier for them to send information back and forth within your organization, that's what Google gives you the ability to do. So really, to get back to the main talking points, it's allowing your organization to work in the future, any device, any team, anytime, anywhere, to work better together, to collaborate with one another, using the tools that you use in your consumer lives. You know, the most important thing about talent acquisition, talent retention, is that you give them the tools to be successful. And when you hire someone, the number one productivity measure is not necessarily what that employee brings in terms of intelligence or skills. It is actually the number one way to find if this new employee is going to be productive is their connectivity at your organization. With Google Apps, with Mail and Drive and the social application that we give your enterprise, and Calendar and Drive and Documents, we allow your organization to be more and more connected. And that's why you're going to hear from folks like Garden Fresh who have found so much productivity using Google Apps. Really quickly, Roche, an organization with 90,000 employees, a little quote from Roche, that Google Apps is going to allow 90,000 employees to work better together, focusing on our core business, which is saving patients' lives. Roche took what a problem they had, and they said, you know what, we're going to leave collaboration. We're going to make Google, make our connectivity, give that to Google, and we're going to focus on our core message and our core business, which is saving lives. That's where we're allowing them to do that. So think about this as a movement. This is 5,000 new businesses signing up every single day. If you take a look at Google Apps and some of the logos you see, if you take a look at some of the other Google solutions, Maps and Earth, the Google Cloud Platform, and some of the logos you see there, the Google Search Appliance, right? That's what makes up Google Enterprise. But you're going to hear from Garden Fresh today how they've adopted the platform, how they're using it, and how they're being successful. This is not a new movement. This is a movement that is it is the future, and it's existing right now. So I'm going to pass it back over to Lori, and I think she's going to introduce our first speaker from Garden Fresh.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jeff, for getting us started. And folks, if you have questions for Jeff, get them into the questions pane. We'll bring them back at the end. to address those. And at this point, we're going to shift gears to hear from the first of our Garden Fresh speakers for the day. Joining us today is Eric Rosenzweig. Now, Eric Rosenzweig is Vice President of Information Technology and the Chief Information Officer for Garden Fresh Restaurant Corp., representing 129 restaurants in 15 states, branded as Souplantation in Southern California and Sweet Tomatoes elsewhere. Rosenzweig brings more than 25 years of experience managing technology at leading corporations, including Petco Animal Supplies and Anacomp. Rosenzweig has worked extensively in both applications development and infrastructure, focusing on partnering with businesses to find innovative solutions to derive value from technology. First off, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your experience with all of us. I want to give you a warm welcome.
Thank you, Lori.
And Eric, let's start out with a bit of background on Garden Fresh and some of the challenges that prompted you to look for a solution.
Sure. I've been at Garden Fresh for about a year and a half, although it's a 30-plus year company. We have, as Lori stated, 129 locations in 15 states and 6,000 employees, but only about 500 or so folks using email. One of the things when I first came to Garden Fresh was I noticed how small the staff was here, and we were doing a lot of things that I didn't feel were really adding business value. One of those was our email solution. We were really in a situation where we were using a product called Cario. We're a Linux shop in general, and we were using an Exchange emulator, which is what Cario is, trying to do the functions of Exchange and for email. And as we continued to grow, we kind of grew out of the application. So server maintenance was an issue. It was taking a lot of our time and our third parties that help us support us. And what we decided was we really needed to look for something that would meet our needs, not only now, but in the future as well. In particular, in our restaurants, just to give some background, our restaurants were Linux as well, and people were using web-based applications there. And here at the corporate office, we were using Microsoft Office throughout the corporation. And again, we were having issues with the conversion of documents and applications between environments. And I was really looking for something that would allow us to collaborate and be if you will, a single source of the truth, so that we didn't have a lot of this emailing of attachments and conversions that were going on in the Linux world. So we looked at the solutions that were out there. We really wanted it to be cloud-based. I didn't want to be in the server business, didn't want to be in the email business, and wanted to find a solution that would suit our needs across the board. And after looking at a lot of solutions that were out there, we really focused on Google for a couple of reasons. One, we had a fair amount of familiarity within the company. We had folks that were using Gmail personally, but what really kind of sealed the deal in my mind was when we saw it in action. We certainly saw through our partner SADA the marketing material through SADA and Google as far as collaboration and what we could do. Excuse me. But what really drove that home was when I and my team created a 3 or 4 page document, your typical questions of things that had come up in our discovery process, and we actually shared that document out with SADA and with Google, and I could see in action within the next 5 to 10 minutes after I had shared that out, people jumping into the document all at the same time. I could see who was doing what. There was chats going on the side, questions or comments being asked back to us. We were able to respond. It was truly a collaborative process, and at one point I think we had 8 or 10 people in the same document, and before I knew it, a couple hours was gone, and we were good to go. So it was really, for me, that really drove home that we were going to be able to do more than just get out of the email business, but really bring technology to the front to allow collaboration in ways that we never had possible before.
I know that oftentimes there's a concern about downtime, training costs, and other bumps in the road that come with migrating any technology. I'm wondering, what was your experience rolling out Google Apps at Garden Fresh?
Well, I think, it's always challenging to change the culture. As I said, we were fortunate, and then our stores were using web-based email, so at least they were familiar with that. So we had that on our side. The corporate office, the Outlook users were certainly more power users, and that was a concern. I can't, although I don't mean to plug them too much, but SADA Systems really did a phenomenal job of preparing us for that transition and the change management pieces, not just the technology of being able to convert off of our Careo system to Google, which was certainly critical to our success, but really just the change management process. And what we did here is we started with early adopters. I identified a group of both field and corporate users, and most of those were heavier users, so we could really see Google in action, get some good feedback, make sure we made changes where we could to help with that education process. And we signed the deal for Google at the end of December. I think it was right toward the end of the year, and it was mid-March when we finally went live. And it's been a huge success overall. We're using pretty much all the tools that Google has provided us, whether it's documents, spreadsheets, forms have certainly come to the forefront, and I know Jamie's going to talk about those. But in that limited amount of time, we now have over 15,000 documents up on Google Drive, which is a variety of documents, spreadsheets, PDFs, but also other documents that are not Google documents, but whether it's images or some of our construction diagrams and whatnot. So really using it as that sole repository for information. And, even our vocabulary is changing it here with the Google implementation. Now we'll hear people saying, well, I'm going to put that out on Google Docs and I'll share it with you. So instant messaging, all those things that we didn't have before are really what I've liked about it the most, is that people find ways to make it work best for them. And what works best for me may not work as well for somebody else, but there's enough flexibility within the Google suite that people find a way.
Oh, wonderful. And at this point, let's take a look at some of the real-world examples of Google Apps at Garden Fresh.
Yeah, and again, as I said, we've been using it across the board in all areas of the business. Jamie Knight from our asset protection certainly has some good examples, so I'll hand it back to you, Lori.
Okay, fair enough. Next up, we do have Jamie Knight, and Jamie Knight is the Director of Asset Protection at Garden Fresh Restaurant Corporation. Knight began his career with Garden Fresh in 1990 as a restaurant manager. After working as a general manager from 1993 to 2008, he was asked to initiate an asset protection focus and continues to work in that capacity. Knight earned his Bachelor of Arts in English and American Literature from the University of California, San Diego in 1990. So Jamie, I know you're quite the road warrior, so we thank you for finding a spot to perch to join today's webinar. Welcome.
Thank you, Lori. Happily, I'm coming to you from my home office today.
Very good. So let's get started with a bit of background on you. Can you expand just a bit on your role within Garden Fresh?
Absolutely. As Eric mentioned, I'm the Director of Asset Protection for Garden Fresh, and in that role I am a department of one person, but I also have a dual role. I work with a team of 3 other people, and we work to support the operations group in many different ways.
Now, I understand that you and your team are among the first at Garden Fresh to use Google Apps. So what led you down that path?
Well, I actually got our ops support team using Google Docs before Garden Fresh went Google. As I mentioned, there's 4 of us. We work in 4 different locations, and we work together on lots of different communications that go out to the restaurants on a regular basis. And it used to be a process of one person would take one area, somebody else would take another area, and then we would cut and paste at the end to have a cohesive document. So I was looking for a way that we could be more collaborative, and found the Google Docs, and we started using it probably about 2 months before Eric announced that we were going Google. And so when Eric said that Garden Fresh was going to start using Google, I'm pretty certain I was one of the first people to raise their hand and jump in for the pilot. I was very excited.
Very nice. Well, why don't we take a moment and take a look at some of your use case examples that you have to share with us today, and walk us through how you used to approach some of these processes versus how you do it now.
Great. Love to. So as I mentioned, I am a department of one when it comes to asset protection. We utilize video surveillance in our restaurants, and I use an outside company to conduct audits on a regular basis of our cashiers. And it used to be that the auditor would email me with basically a list of the items from the week that they had found. I would go back into the video application and review each of the items and basically filter out what I thought was important, take some screenshots, and then compose another email to go to the restaurants to bring the attention to the general manager. So that would go along with whatever questions I had surrounding the particular incident, and then I would wait for a response. Once we switched over to Google, I got our auditor on board and had him create some Google Docs that I can then share with each of the appropriate parties. The auditor now takes the screenshots, pastes them into a spreadsheet, puts their notes about what they're seeing in there, and then there's a spot for myself and the restaurant to also respond and put in what we see and what our concerns are. And hopefully, in the case of the restaurant, they can also let me know what actions they took based on the information. The nice thing about this is that every party involved sees all the information. It's no longer a one-way communication. In the past, it was very difficult to get the response back from the restaurant, and I very, very infrequently sent the information all the way back to the auditor. So now everybody can see exactly what's going on, and I'm getting much more timely responses as all the information is basically in one spot for the general manager receiving it, and it's become a real regular process. They know to check this on a regular basis. So this is really, really working well for us, and the great thing on this is it really streamlined my role in it, where I used to have to be the intermediary for every bit of information. Now I can just comment where needed, and the information is really getting straight to the managers and the people that can act upon it.
And it looks like it's just such a transparent process.
Absolutely. The document is also shared with the district manager for the restaurant. They are able to check in and see what's going on and what information is coming from the video surveillance. So like I said, the information is available to everybody that it should be available to, and we can really control who it's shared with so that people that shouldn't see it can't see it.
All right. Now, Jamie, I know you have another example to share, so let's take a look at that and get some background on this scenario and how you currently approach it. Yep.
One of the things that I've started using a lot more lately is the Google form, which is basically a survey. We send a lot of information to our restaurants on a regular basis, and frequently we need responses back from them, and the old email way is hit or miss at best. As an organization, we send out a lot of coupons. If anybody out there is a Souplantation Sweet Tomato guest, you might be a member of our email club, but we send email coupons every week. And we have a very creative marketing department that likes to come up with new ways to entice guests to come into the restaurants, which is great for the organization, but it can be hard on our point of sale system. And so we have run into problems in the past where marketing's latest and greatest coupon simply doesn't work the way we intended for it to work. And frequently this works in some locations and not in others. So this example is a coupon that went out a few months back, and it was a new type of offer for us, and we really needed to know that it was going to work properly in every single restaurant, and at the point that we sent out the survey, it was going to go live, I believe, in 2 days. So the old way would have been that the operations support team, well, 3 of us on the ops support team would have jumped on the phone and called each of the restaurants and to make sure that this was working and that the cashiers knew how to handle it. In this situation, we decided to handle it with a survey, which I put together, sent out to the restaurants. We brought attention to it through our internal company portal, and the response rate was really high. Very quickly. The form itself had the instructions for exactly what they were supposed to do, and then they simply had to answer the single question there. So within about a day and a half, we knew everybody that had completed the survey. We had a very small list of the people who it wasn't working for, and then we had a list of about 30 restaurants that had not returned the survey. So the 3 of us split those up. Each of us made 10 phone calls. And so in that situation, we had to make 10 phone calls instead of 40 each. And this type of survey is being used frequently in the organization. It's a great way to get quick, immediate feedback from our restaurants.
Now, Jamie, I'm just wondering, what kind of resources are required to create this survey? Do you need IT help, or how does that go down?
Once you know how to do it, and they're very intuitive, so it's really easy to figure them out. But these types of surveys now, for me, take less than 5 minutes to create and to disperse to all the restaurants. IT does not have to be involved at all. There's a few of the surveys that I'm doing more complicated things, and Eric and I spent 10 minutes researching how to do it, and from then it's very simple. So IT really doesn't have to be involved.
Nice. And you have another survey example for us today?
I do. Besides the single event surveys that we're doing, we're also looking at replacing some of our paper-based processes with forms and surveys. This particular example is for the restaurants to request more complimentary meal passes. We send a certain number of complimentary meal passes to each of our restaurants every month, and those are to handle guest issues that might come up inside the restaurant, and also to market the restaurant when they're out and about around town. And sometimes if it's been a busy month, they might run low. They used to call our administrative department, who would then send them extra comps, but nobody would really know who nobody knew, other than the admin department, who was getting comps, how often it was happening. And a lot of these requests ended up being made one time, and then they were perpetuated month after month. So restaurants were really receiving way too many. So I decided to clean up that process, and this form was the best way I could think of to do it. Now they request these whenever they're running out, and there's different types that they might request. And so one of the really helpful things about the forms is that information can be filtered to the appropriate approver, and it doesn't have to go to other approvers. So in this particular example, if somebody had requested marketing comps, then the information would fill in a spreadsheet, and it gets filtered to the appropriate sheet on this spreadsheet. This particular one was for marketing, and Chelsea, who's going to be our next speaker, is the approver for additional marketing comps. So she has her notification rules set up so that she sees anytime information comes into the marketing sheet of this spreadsheet. But if there's a request for problem comps, Chelsea doesn't really care about that. I'm the approver for those, so she doesn't need to know about it. And we can then have a ongoing record of who is requesting more. And it's also much easier to have a conversation about a restaurant to make sure that they're handling these properly and really taking care of them. So this process just got started last month, and already it's going extremely well. And we've been able to do some training in the field around properly using complimentary meal passes because of the visibility this is now providing.
Wow, great. Well, Thank you so much, Jamie. All fabulous information, and don't go too far because we will be having you back for the Q&A at the end. And at this
Great.
point,
Thanks, Lori.
yes, absolutely. And for the record, I just wanted to mention that I am a Club Veg member.
Good to hear. Thank you.
All right, now let's bring up Chelsea Seifert with a few more examples of how she and her team use Google Apps. But first, a few words in the way of an introduction for Chelsea. Now, Chelsea is the Field Marketing Specialist for Garden Fresh Restaurant Corp. Seifert began her career with the company in 1999, spent her first 10 years in various operations positions in the restaurant. In 2005, Seifert received her bachelor's degree in marketing from San Diego State University, and in 2010 transitioned her career into the corporate marketing field with Garden Fresh. As part of the marketing team, Seifert focuses on local sales building initiatives and manages promotional and brand-related projects to ensure timely implementation and execution throughout the company. So welcome, Chelsea. I know you've been waiting patiently in the wings here, so it is a pleasure to have you on today.
Hi, Lori. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, Chelsea, let's get started with a little bit about your role at Garden Fresh, and maybe you can share some of the challenges that you were up against.
Okay, great. I'm the field marketing manager here at Garden Fresh. And in that role, I work very closely with all of our restaurants on a regular basis with brand messaging, brand compliance, upcoming promotions or menu information, and local sales building initiatives. And because my job involves a high level of communication and collaboration with other departments here at Garden Fresh, I was really looking for ways to improve our communication and collaboration process within our organization.
All right, so this really was right up your alley. So let's take a look at some of your examples that you have for us today.
Great. Our company has several promotions that run at different times throughout the year, and one of our most common being our monthly menu promotions. And for these menu promotions, several departments here at Garden Fresh have unique information that they need to provide to the restaurants. For example, marketing, we want to tell the restaurants what sort of promotional materials to display and when they should display them. The culinary team would want to make sure the menu items are being prepared correctly. The purchasing team would want to alert them if there's any new items they need to order for the menu items. And as you heard from Jamie and his operations support team, they really want to make sure that everything around the promotion is executed at the highest level within the restaurant. So in the past, each department would work on their piece of communication somewhat independently and then send it out to the restaurants at different times and oftentimes maybe through different communication channels. So some departments might send an email, others might post something on our internal portal, some might leave voicemails for the restaurants. So it was a little bit difficult for the restaurants sometimes to gather all the information and really have, be able to put a plan together to run the menu promotion. And if we did want to combine our information before sending it out, it often involved creating a document, saving it on our computer, then attaching it in an email, sending it out, and then other viewers would either have to edit it, then resave it, then resend it, or they would, provide their feedback in an email, say, hey, I think you should change this, this, and this, and then we'd have to go back in the document and make those changes. So now, with Google Apps, we're all able to actually collaborate in one document at the same time. This page here is an example of one of the pages from our July menu promotional document. And this document usually runs anywhere from 10 to 15 pages, and all the various departments that have something to communicate to our restaurants can input their information whenever it's convenient, and we can all be working on it at the same time. If you click through to the example of the shared pieces, here you go. This shows the little colored boxes show you at any time who else is viewing the document. You can see right here that Jamie, it shows that he's one of the viewers in the document. And you can even see what pages they're working on. And the end result of this is that as a organization, we can send one complete thorough, and timely document to our restaurants. And we've been using this for several months now, and over time we've received more and more positive feedback that they like that our restaurants like what they're seeing, and we've also received fewer questions that come up throughout the month because they know where to go to find any information that they need.
Now, it sounds like this document actually moves in almost in stages. So do you have ability to control which group sees it when, and then can multiple people edit it at the same time without multiple copies? How does that work?
Absolutely, and that's one of the really cool things about it. If you go to the next slide, instead of having to save the document and attach it to an email like I mentioned before, when you click on the share button at the top right corner of the document, you just simply enter the email address of whoever you want to share it with, and you can grant them certain editing rights. Either they can edit it, maybe just view it, and they pretty much have instantaneous access to that document, and you can remove them at any time and change their permissions at any time if you choose to do so.
That's pretty granular. That's great. Let's take a look at your next example, and you can walk us through how this next scenario came about and how it's benefiting the company at this point.
Sure. This example is actually very cool because it was created by one of our catering team members who works in the field. This catering coordinator, she basically took one of my previous spreadsheets and then she created her own. We have about 45 of our restaurants that offer catering delivery services, and the catering coordinators at those restaurants are really responsible for building their catering sales on a very local level. So this spreadsheet shows how the catering coordinator goes out either inside the restaurant or outside the restaurant and creates leads to basically build the catering business or the catering sales. And they're able to put notes on if they need to do additional follow-ups and kind of what success they've had with these leads. And if you look down at the bottom, there are different tabs in this particular spreadsheet for the different restaurants in this Orlando region. So the catering coordinators are able to share ideas. They're able to easily, with one click, view what other restaurants in their regions are doing and what kind of successes they're having with their particular leads.
Fabulous. Fabulous. And let's take a look at the next one. Great.
This third example shows how we, as a marketing department, have improved our collaboration. A large part of my role involves working with our internal graphics team to create and print promotional materials that eventually get sent out to our restaurants that they either display or maybe they distribute when they're doing field marketing. And in the past, we didn't really have a great way to visibly see how many jobs were in the queue, or any of the jobs delayed or anything like that. And before we switched to Google Apps, our team was actually thinking of purchasing some software to help us better manage the workflow within our department. So when we switched to Google Apps, we created this job tracker spreadsheet for our internal marketing team. And the columns in blue are actually input by the job requesters. So you can see there's a few different requesters that use this tool. We put a job in the queue, something we're requesting to be created. We put when we'd like to see the proofs and when we eventually like the final product that would be sent to the restaurants. And then the columns in yellow is our graphics team, where they would note when they actually pick up the job, when the job was actually delivered and completed. So it's been a great tool, and it really has allowed us to manage and monitor our workflow process from start to finish.
Fabulous. And what strikes me is just how creative the solutions are, and also it almost seems like it's contagious, that one application then spurs others to think of other ways to use it. Has that been the case?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the uses are endless, and it's great to see other people in our organization learning how to do it, teaching themselves, being excited about it. So it's been great.
Yeah, I can see it in the examples and also in the enthusiasm. And Chelsea, thank you very much for your great examples. And we have a number of questions coming into the queue right now. And Before we do that, though, I would like to go to our final poll. So coming up on your screen, folks, is that second poll. And again, we'd love to hear from you if you would weigh in on what are your next steps around cloud technology. You've had a chance to see how Garden Fresh is using Google Apps kind of in their business currently, and maybe got some ideas, but we're just wondering at this point, are you actively evaluating cloud technology and plan to adopt maybe within the next 6 months, perhaps evaluating, planning to adopt within the next 7 to 12? Maybe you've already switched, and if so, we'd love to be able to contact you with some ideas on how you can optimize. Of course, possibly no plans to adopt cloud technology at this point, or still not clear how cloud technology would benefit your organization. And if that's the case, certainly would love to hear from you on that as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at those responses. All right, we've got a very nice representation here with 15% of you thinking within the next 6 months, another 15% 7 to 12 months. Have folks that are currently not planning to adopt cloud technology, maybe just shopping around, seeing what's out there. Got a nice group of folks, 23%, still not clear on how it would benefit your organization. So maybe today gave you some ideas, but if not, certainly reach out and we can give you some more. Going to be passing it over right now to Jeff, who can give us an idea on where you can get more information in that capacity. Over to you, Jeff.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lori. For the 53 or so % of the folks on the call that are going to, explore cloud technology in the next year or so, the best way to do that is really to visit google.com/apps and click the Contact Sales button. Look at the red arrow up in the right-hand side of the screen there. That's where you will be connected to someone at Google to evaluate your situation and have our technologies work for you, much like you just heard Garden Fresh talk. And I do want to say a thank you on behalf of Google to Eric and Jamie and Chelsea for sharing their story. And I think if you go back to what they said, the common theme, and if you think about what I said about connectivity of employees, they really have streamlined the process of connectivity via increased standardized communication. And that's what they've done that through Google Apps. So do click on that Contact Sales button. On the next slide, you're going to be able to see an email address. You can also reach out. And so thank you so much for joining. I think, Lori, there's a little bit more for some Q&As. Am I right there?
Absolutely right. And great segue. Thank you, Jeff. And if we can get Eric, Jamie, Chelsea, and Jeff back to the virtual podium, if you will, we'll go ahead and get started on those. But first question over to you, Eric. And this one is, how long did training take in total, and how did you manage the training process across so many locations? I think it was 128.
Yeah, it's a good question. And again, we had a little bit of an advantage because the restaurants were familiar with using a web application for email, albeit that it was very significantly different with Google. At least they were in that mode of using a browser for that technology. But what we really did is over that time of that implementation, starting with the early adopters and then going to our alpha users, we really collected a great wealth of information as to where people were having trouble, how they needed to change, how they were thinking, or what they needed to do. And actually, our training was very quick. We actually went live over a weekend. On Monday, we didn't have any training. We just let people kind of figure it out for themselves. And we had a Gone Google website that we had created that people could reference and go find information. But in general, we wanted people to struggle a little bit that first day and figure it out. And on day 2, we had open sessions all day. Every couple hours, we had a session that people could webinar into, and we would go through somewhat of a formal training of mail and calendar and docs, and that would go on throughout the day. And then the second day, we just had a kind of an open mic all day where people could call in at any time with questions. And again, we used SADA to help us with the training and the answering of those questions. And then we had one follow-up 1 week after, again, another open mic day, if you will, where people could call in and ask questions. And that was about it. And what we've really found over time with Google is not only is it intuitive and you can figure out most of it on your own, but when in doubt, you can Google it. And we hear that term a lot. How did you figure out how to do this? Well, I Googled it, and lo and behold, whether it's on the Google's actual websites with instructions, or somebody created their own video on YouTube how to do something, there's just a wealth of information out there for folks, and I think it's how people are more used to finding information as opposed to formal training. They want to find the training they need when they need it, and not have this long-winded training that may or may not apply to them until 6 months down the road, which time they will have forgotten it anyway.
Yeah, good point. All good points. Thank you. This one for you, Jeff. Ning is asking how Google will address the security concern when the information is stored in the public cloud space.
Yeah, it's that's best answered, quite frankly, with a deep dive in security, and depending on your specific security needs, depending on what regulations your organization is subject to. The answer is, quite frankly, it really depends, and the best way to go through that and to set up a deeper conversation is to click that contact sales box. We have organizations like Genentech, there is an organization in Europe that's a financial organization that's huge that are using Google Apps, and they are in compliance with their certain regulations. It just depends on what your specific organization needs, and it's best addressed on a one-off call on a deeper dive, and depending on the size of your organization, potentially with a security expert. It really depends, but we can't answer that question on a one-off basis. And if it's regarding document archiving, the vault security, the application that we give organizations for e-discovery, that addresses vault, that addresses the email e-discovery piece. If it's email security or if it's document security, we can go into all of that on a one-off basis.
And actually, Ning had somewhat of a follow-up question that might add a little more color for you, Jeff. Will Google App Solution be a good tool for a small business?
Absolutely. We see organizations with overtaxed IT departments that can't be everything to everyone that love Google Apps because they allow those IT organizations to be nimble and able to serve their users' needs and allow them, again, to connect and communicate. We also see Google Apps very effective at the high end, in the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 businesses, because we allow them to do the same thing. Obviously, we're a little more involved with the higher end, but it's great for organizations across the board.
All right. This one going back over to Eric from Claire. And the question is, how do you manage security of information with users accessing information on different devices, both at home and at work?
That's a really good question, and I can't say that we've totally figured it out. We did have web access before, not Outlook web access, but Carrio's version of that. So people did have access. We had VPN and all of those kinds of things. We are in the process of looking at a device management solution. Google has a lot out of the box that we are implementing. So right out of the box, we were able to force folks that come in to get email on their mobile device to have a password on their phone, to be able to wipe it. And so there's some functionality right out of the box. One of the biggest benefits has been the Chrome browser and the ability to log into the browser so that all your preferences are wherever you go. So if I use the Chrome browser here at work, all my bookmarks, all that information is synchronized, so that when I go home and log into the Chrome browser, the experience looks exactly the same. So again, that's been a huge benefit for us. I will say the mobile devices, I think, are challenging for everybody, and Google has some tools out of the box that help with that, and I think it really depends on the security level that you need within your organization. We're not a bank, we're not doing healthcare, so our needs are certainly different than others.
All right. This one, actually, I think it would be great for everybody. Maybe we'll have Chelsea, you start off for us. We've heard a lot about documents and spreadsheets and forms today. Do you use any other tools from the Google Apps suites?
And I don't know if this counts as a tool. I think it does, but the calendar feature has been a really unique one too. For our department, we're now able to share calendars, so we can put our marketing team schedule if anyone has a day off or a half day, and we can all easily see that. So So that's been kind of a cool feature. And then the monthly promotional document that I showed is actually off the presenter or presentation feature, which I guess is kind of equivalent to what a PowerPoint would be. So that's what I've got there. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. In my opinion, it does. How about you, Jamie?
I love the chat function. On the email screen, you can see your chat list on the right side, and you can see who's available and who's not available, and just fire off a quick question to anybody that is available at that time. I think that makes things a lot more efficient, and it's a great feature. And just to double down, the calendar is really effective for me also.
All right. And how about you, Eric? Anything any ground that hasn't been covered?
Well, I think the one thing that is part and parcel of things, and I think it was shown in both Chelsea and Jamie's example, is the notification feature and the ability to know when something changes. I don't have to keep looking. So within a spreadsheet, I can tailor it down to a cell. It can notify me if a cell has changed. The whole spreadsheet, I can get it immediately, or I can get it as a daily digest. So instead of always looking, wondering, has it been updated, has it been changed, I just get an email telling me it's been changed. So that to me shouldn't be an underrated piece of the suite, because it really does make a difference in productivity.
This one for you, Eric. In your experience, what is the standard implementation time for a large company? Do you suggest a big bang deployment or a phased approach, or what are your thoughts?
I think that depends on each organization. I don't know that there's a canned answer for that. I certainly have spoken with folks who have done both. In general, when we talk to references in our kind of number of users and even higher, the vast majority did it as a big bang. Certainly they may have lengthened the amount of time. As I said, we started in January and we were live by the middle of March. But I think so other teams may, and again, depending on the technology that you're using today, if you're a heavy Outlook shop, it may take people longer. You may want to have a longer early adopter and alpha phase so that you can really collect a lot of good information and be able to tailor training to the way your company is working it. So I don't think there's a stock answer. But what I will say is the number of folks that I've talked to, certainly in larger organizations as well, have mostly done it as over a weekend, switching people over, just because of the cumbersome nature of trying to have some do one way and some another, which makes a headache for the help desk, which I can also speak to, that now that we've gone on Google, our calls to our help desk for email, calendar, synchronization, all those things that were quite a headache before have dropped to none or really close. So from a help desk perspective, we've really been able to get away from that.
All right, thank you. Over to you, Jamie. Do you store files in the cloud?
Absolutely. I recently took all of my old files and documents and uploaded them into Google so that they were more accessible when I'm on the road. As I mentioned earlier, I am on the road a lot, and I used to have everything on the server at the office, and I would VPN in order to access things, and that would sometimes be challenging on my laptop in the restaurants. So I've got everything in the cloud now at this point, and it's much easier to work with my documents.
And I think we're going to make this our last question here for the day. For you, Jeff, and we kind of got at it a little earlier with a question, but I think there may be more to say about it. Is Google Apps only good for large organizations with a strong IT team, or can small organizations use it as well?
No, across the board. 5,000 organizations sign up for Google Apps on a daily basis. And if you think about who that is, or who those folks are that are signing up, inevitably a lot of those are small businesses. But from the 1 to 2 to 3 person shops, all the way up to the Fortune 500, it really does span across the board.
And Jeff, I think I may have cut you off earlier on that question about the tools that are being used, and we heard from Jamie and Chelsea and Eric, but I don't think I gave you a chance to weigh in on that. I'm sorry. Would you like to do that right now?
No problem. No problem at all. I think that you heard Jamie and Chelsea and Eric talk about what they use. What I think I'll chime in with is what you're going to see a bigger part of in the future, and I think a lot of that is Drive. A lot of that is file sharing and file storage and how you collaborate and how you access files. And I think that another forward-thinking piece to think about is Google's cloud platform. We saw a couple of logos on a slide and who is adopting Google's cloud platform and our infinite scalability. If your organization has a need for that sort of thing to run customized applications with and needs bandwidth and needs availability and scalability, I think those are the two things that you should discuss with someone from Google, someone from a partner like SADA. I think those are the two things that didn't get quite mentioned as much as I would have liked to have heard them, but certainly pieces that are going to play a large part in the future.
Perfect, and thank you very much. And folks, we really are rubbing up against the top of the hour here, just about at that time, and would like to thank each of you for joining us today and hope you found today's webinar of value and that you'll want to join us for future events. Again, you will be receiving a short survey at the end of the webinar. We certainly would appreciate you taking a moment to fill it out as we value your time and your feedback. Additionally, for any of those questions that we were not able to get to on air today, we'll be sure to get a reply over to you via email over the next week or so. And note that a copy of today's recorded webcast will be made available as an on-demand viewing, and it will come to each of you in the way of an email with a link by early next week. Again, echoing special thanks to our speakers, to our sponsors, Google and SADA Systems, for making today possible. Again, this is your moderator, Lori Dearman, saying thank you and have a great rest of the week. Bye for now.